Everyone thinks Florida is either Disney, Miami, or a retirement community that smells like sunscreen and regret. Everyone is wrong. Buried between the theme parks and the chaos are 10 tiny towns with a quality of life that makes big city people quietly furious. We're talking a town where fossilized shark teeth wash up on the beach like loose chain. A town that invented air conditioning and then got weirdly humble about it. A town with actual hills in Florida, which should be illegal, and a town where swimming with wild manatees isn't just legal, it's basically the entire economy. Like this video, or the algorithm sends you back to the timeshare presentation. So how does a state famous for theme parks, spring break, alligators and swimming pools, and the strangest news headlines in America also manage to hide 10 of the most livable small towns you've never heard of? These are the places that don't show up in the glossy relocation ads. No influencers doing sponsored beach yoga. No developers selling you a condo the size of a parking space. Just small, strange, genuinely pleasant towns where regular people quietly built a better life while nobody was looking. Some of them run on shellfish, some run on antiques, or oysters, or a Greek fishing tradition older than the state highways. A couple of them have hills, which in Florida is basically an actual cheat code, and every one of them costs less than the version of Florida you already know. We're going to count them down, from the Sleepy Springs playground at number 10, all the way to the 1,000-person island running an entire seafood empire at number 1. And here's your one warning before we start. Every single one of these towns comes with a catch, a real one, because this is Florida, and Paradise here always sends an invoice, usually right around hurricane season. Let's get into it. Number 10, High Spring. Tucked into the oak forests of north central Florida, about 25 minutes northwest of Gainesville, High Springs is a tiny railroad town of roughly 6,000 people. On paper, it's a quiet main street with a restored old theater, a historic train depot, and a row of antique shops that seem to close whenever the owner feels like taking a nap. That's the boring brochure version, and it undersells the place completely. Here's what actually makes High Springs special. It sits at the front door of a cluster of freshwater springs, so clear they don't look real. Ginny Springs is the star of the show, and it stays a constant 72 degrees every single day of the year, summer or winter, no exceptions. The water is so transparent that the famous ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau reportedly described the visibility there as, quote, forever. You can float down the Santa Fe River under a canopy of cypress trees and Spanish moss, drift past turtles sunning themselves on fallen logs, and do all of it for a fraction of what you'd pay anywhere near a coastline. And the springs aren't just one attraction. Poe Springs, Blue Springs, and Gilchrist Blue are all right nearby, which means you basically have a whole system of natural swimming pools within a short drive of your front porch. Cave divers travel here from around the world. Families come to tube and picnic, and residents get to treat all of it like a backyard. There is also a real community here, not just a tourist stopover. The downtown has a handful of good local restaurants, a brewery, and weekend markets, and the town hosts festivals throughout the year that pull people in from across the county. It manages to feel small without feeling empty, which is a harder balance to strike than it sounds. For a town this small, the quality of life punches absurdly above its weight. Cost of living sits comfortably below the national average, crime is low, and the pace is the kind of slow that big city people claim they want until they actually experience it. It's the sort of place where the biggest traffic event of the week is a train going by. The catch? There's no beach here, the summer heat is a full contact sport, and on holiday weekends, Ginny Springs transforms into a floating college party you can hear from the parking lot. You'll also be driving into Gainesville for a serious hospital or a big grocery run. But midweek, in the off-season, with the river to yourself, High Springs is one of the most genuinely peaceful places in the entire state. And this is only the beginning. Number 9, Micanopy. If you blinked while driving through, you'd miss it. Micanopy has around 650 residents, which makes it less a town and more a rumor with a zip code. But this tiny dot on the map happens to be the oldest continuously inhabited inland town in all of Florida, founded back in 1821. And the entire place is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Not one building, the whole town. Picture a single main street called Choloca Boulevard, buried under a tunnel of enormous moss-draped live oaks, lined with brick storefronts from the 1800s that now sell antiques, used books, and the kind of heavy wooden furniture your grandmother always swore was worth a fortune. The light comes through the Spanish moss in long golden streaks. It is almost aggressively picturesque. It's so perfectly preserved, in fact, that Hollywood came calling. The 1991 Michael J. Fox movie Doc Hollywood used Micanopy as its small-town backdrop, and the filmmakers barely had to change a thing. They didn't build a set. They just pointed the camera down the street and hit record. Just outside town sits Payne's Prairie Preserve, a sweeping wild savanna where free-roaming horses and actual wild bison share the land with alligators and hundreds of bird species. There's an observation tower where you can watch the whole prairie stretch out in front of you. Wild bison. In Florida, a short bike ride from an antique shop. That is a sentence that should not be true. And yet here we are. The honest downside is that Micanopy is essentially a gorgeous day trip that a few hundred lucky people happen to live inside. There are no hospitals here, no nightlife, and roughly one restaurant open on any given day depending on the mood of the universe. You'll drive to Gainesville, about 12 miles up the road, for anything resembling real errands or medical care. But if your dream retirement is a rocking chair, a shaded porch, and a street that looks like a 19th century oil painting, Micanopy is almost impossible to beat. And no, I'm not making that up. Number 8. Tarpon Springs. Now we get weird in the very best way. Tarpon Springs, sitting on the Gulf Coast just north of Tampa and Clearwater, is home to about 26,000 people and something you would absolutely never expect to stumble into in the middle of Florida. A fully functioning Greek fishing village. This is the self-proclaimed sponge capital of the world. And unlike most towns that slap a grand title on themselves, Tarpon Springs genuinely earned it. Back in the early 1900s, Greek sponge divers came here for the rich natural sponge beds out in the Gulf, and they simply never left. To this day, Tarpon Springs has the highest concentration of Greek Americans of any city in the entire United States. A meaningful share of residents still speak Greek at home. Walk the sponge docks on Dodecanese Boulevard and you'll see real working sponge boats unloading their haul, Greek bakeries pumping out fresh baklava and loukoumades, and family-run tavernas where the portions are less a meal and more a personal challenge. Every January, the town holds its famous Epiphany celebration at Spring Bayou, where young men dive into the chilly water to retrieve a wooden cross, and whoever surfaces holding it is said to be blessed with a year of good luck. It draws thousands of people. It's a genuine, centuries-old Orthodox tradition happening right here on the Florida Gulf Coast, complete with the blue and white architecture and the towering St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Cathedral. Beyond the docks, the town has a quieter residential charm that most day trippers never see. There are shaded neighborhoods full of historic bungalows, a scenic bayou lined with old homes, and a slower rhythm just a few blocks off the main tourist strip. You get the food and the festivals when you want them, and the peace and quiet when you do not. The cost of living is reasonable for a coastal Pinellas County town. The food scene alone is worth the price of admission, and you're a short drive from the beaches of the Tampa Bay area. The catch is that the docks lean touristy and a little kitschy, some of the surrounding blocks feel a bit dated, and the low-lying waterfront carries all the usual Gulf Coast hurricane and flooding exposure. But for what a house costs here, you get real culture, incredible food, and a working coastline that most people drive right past on their way to somewhere more expensive and less interesting. Speaking of expensive, this next one is going to test your budget. Number 7. Mount Dora. Here's something the state of Florida is simply not supposed to have. Hills. Actual, rolling, honest-to-goodness elevation. Mount Dora sits about an hour northwest of Orlando, perched on a bluff overlooking Lake Dora, and locals proudly call it the New England of the South, which is a genuinely bold thing to say in a state where the highest natural point is basically a tall sand dune with delusions of grandeur. With around 16,000 residents, Mount Dora leans into its charm without a hint of shame. There's a historic downtown packed with antique shops, coffee houses and cafes, a nationally known festival calendar that seems to have an event for every single weekend, and, improbably, a small lighthouse standing watch over a freshwater lake. A lighthouse on a lake. It serves almost no navigational purpose, and it is completely, wonderfully delightful. Add in tree-lined streets, narrated lake cruises, and the occasional seaplane lifting off the water, and the whole town feels like a Hallmark movie that somehow gained self-awareness and decided to lean in. The quality of life here is real. Walkable downtown, strong community events, low crime, and easy access to Orlando's airport, hospitals, and big city amenities whenever you need them, without having to actually live in the middle of all that. Now for the part that stings. Mount Dora is not cheap. Median home prices here run well above the Florida average, pushing past $400,000, which is the tax you pay for a town this pretty sitting this close to Orlando. It's fully inland, so there's no beach in sight. The summer heat rating is no joke, and those beloved festival weekends turn finding a parking spot into a genuine blood sport. But if you can afford the entry ticket, you're getting rolling hills, a lakeside lifestyle, and a downtown that people drive clear across the state just to spend an afternoon in. That's the kind of number that makes accountants cry. Number 6. Venice. Down on the Gulf Coast, just south of Sarasota, sits Venice, a town of roughly 28,000 people that quietly holds one of the oldest median ages in a state that is already, let's be honest, basically a national retirement home. More than half the residents here are 65 or older, and instead of judging them, we should probably take notes, because they clearly figured something out that the rest of us missed. Venice is a planned city from the 1920s, laid out in a soft Italian Renaissance style, with a genuinely walkable downtown palm-lined avenues and about 14 miles of Gulf beaches. It's noticeably more affordable than its glamorous neighbors like Naples or Sarasota, with median home prices that, while not cheap, look almost reasonable by comparison. For that price, you get a paved trail system that runs for miles, a historic pier stretching out into the Gulf, easy access to the Micanopy River, and a whole downtown you can actually navigate on foot or by golf cart. It is the rare Florida beach town that was designed for people to live in, not just for developers to sell. The town even carries a strong community flood safety rating that earns residents a real discount on their flood insurance premiums, which, in the state of Florida, is a legitimate flex worth bragging about at parties. But here's the detail that makes Venice unforgettable. It is the self-declared shark tooth capital of the world. Fossilized shark teeth, including massive teeth from the prehistoric megalodon, wash up on Venice Beach constantly, worn smooth and black by millions of years in the sediment. Locals stroll the shoreline with little wire scoops they call Florida snow shovels, sifting the sand for teeth older than the human species. There's an entire festival every spring dedicated to it. You come to the beach for a suntan and you leave holding a fossil that predates the dinosaur's extinction. Try getting that at a resort pool. The catch is right there in the demographics. Venice skews very retiree, very snowbird, and very, very quiet after 9 at night. The summers are hot and heavy with humidity, and hurricane exposure is a constant background hum, with home values dipping after recent storms rolled through. But if you want affordable beach living with a side of accidental paleontology, it is genuinely tough to top. If you're enjoying the countdown so far, take 1 second and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people trying to escape their overpriced city, and I do this every single day. Now let's get into the strangest one on the whole list. Number 5. Apalachicola, way out on the Panhandle. Along a stretch of coastline that locals affectionately call the Forgotten Coast sits Apalachicola. Around 2,300 people live here, in a downtown full of restored Victorian and antebellum homes, working shrimp boats bobbing in the bay. And a pace of life so unhurried it makes the rest of Florida look like it's running on triple espresso. For most of its history, Apalachicola was the oyster capital, and this isn't small-town exaggeration. At its peak, Apalachicola Bay produced about 90% of all the oysters harvested in the entire state of Florida, and roughly 10% of every oyster eaten in the whole country. That is a genuinely staggering amount of seafood pouring out of one small, sleepy bay that most Americans couldn't find on a map. But the truly wild fact about this town is something else entirely. Modern air conditioning was essentially born right here. Back in 1850, a local physician named John Gorey, desperately trying to cool down his feverish malaria and yellow fever patients, invented a machine that could make ice. That invention became the foundation of mechanical refrigeration and eventually air conditioning itself, which means every cool, comfortable building in the sweltering state of Florida, every mall, every hospital, every over-air-conditioned movie theater owes a quiet thank you to this one tiny panhandle town. There's a state museum dedicated to Gorey that you can actually walk through today. The town today runs on a mix of fishing heritage, tourism, and a surprisingly good small-town food scene built around fresh seafood. And the cost of living is low enough that your money stretches a lot further out here on the Forgotten Coast than it would almost anywhere on Florida's more famous shorelines. Now for the dark honesty, because this one earns earns it. Apalachicola Bay's wild oyster fishery collapsed and was shut down completely in 2020 after decades of overharvesting, upstream water disputes, and drought finally caught up with it. It only recently began reopening after years of intensive restoration work. It's a sobering, real cautionary tale about how fragile these little paradises actually are. The town is also genuinely remote, about 80 miles from Tallahassee, and it sits squarely in hurricane country, having taken serious damage in past storms. But nearby St. George Island offers some of the most beautiful and uncrowded beaches in the entire state, and the whole area feels like a preserved snapshot of Florida from before the crowds and the developers ever showed up. Number 4. Safety Harbor. Back on the Tampa Bay side, wedged neatly between busy Clearwater and Tampa, there's a little town of about 17,000 people with a name that honestly sounds like a boat insurance company, Safety Harbor. And this quiet place is built right on top of a genuine legend. Beneath the town flow a set of natural mineral springs known as Espiritu Santo, which translates to Holy Spirit. According to long-standing local lore, the Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto believed these very waters might be the fabled Fountain of Youth. Today, a historic resort and spa, founded all the way back in 1925, sits directly on top of those mineral springs, and it's billed as the only natural mineral spring spa in the state of Florida. Whether or not the water actually reverses aging, people have been happily soaking in it for nearly 100 years, so at minimum it's got a solid customer retention record. What makes Safety Harbor genuinely livable, though, is not the legend. It is the day-to-day feel of the place. It is small enough that people actually know their neighbors, the schools are solid, and the whole town wraps around a marina and a long fishing pier that juts out into the bay. On a normal evening, families walk the waterfront, kids fish off the pier, and the whole thing feels like a version of Florida that the rest of the state forgot to ruin. The town itself is genuinely charming in a way that sneaks up on you. USA Today once named its brick-lined Main Street one of the top 10 main streets in the entire country. You've got pastel storefronts, local art galleries, sidewalk cafes, and a beautiful waterfront park called Felipe Park that's built around an ancient Native American temple mound left by the Tocobaga people. The sunrises over Old Tampa Bay from there belong on a postcard. Walkable, artsy, historic, and calm, it's the very definition of a hidden pocket of sanity. The catch is that Safety Harbor is fairly small on the local job front, and it's sandwiched between two much larger, much busier cities, so it's less a remote wilderness escape and more a quiet island of calm floating in the middle of the sprawling Tampa metro. But for a whole lot of people, especially those who still want city amenities 20 minutes away, that's precisely the appeal, and somehow this list still gets better from here. Number 3. Stuart. Over on the Atlantic side of the state, along a beautiful stretch known as the Treasure Coast, sits Stuart, a town of about 17,500 people that recently landed some serious national spotlight. In 2024, Travel and Leisure magazine named Stuart the #1 best small retirement town in all of America. Not the best in Florida, the best in the entire country, out of everywhere. And once you look at it, you completely understand why. Downtown Stuart has been compared more than once to a Norman Rockwell painting that came to life. There's a charming Riverwalk boardwalk winding along the water, a beautifully restored historic theater called The Lyric, palm-shaded brick streets, boutique shops, and a crime rate that sits comfortably below the national average. Nearly a third of the entire population is of retirement age, and they very clearly know something that the rest of us stuck in traffic don't. Stuart also proudly calls itself the sailfish capital of the world. So if your idea of a perfect life involves a boat, a fishing rod, and the open water, this is very much your kind of place. Just across the water sits Hutchinson Island, home to quiet beaches and a spot called Bathtub Reef Beach, where you can snorkel over a natural offshore reef in calm, shallow, protected water. The Indian River Lagoon and the St. Lucie River wrap the whole town in waterfront. Healthcare here is genuinely strong for a town this size, with a well-regarded regional hospital system, which matters a lot if you were thinking about retirement rather than just a nice vacation. The downtown stays active year-round with art walks, live music, and a farmer's market, so it never has that shuttered seasonal ghost town feeling that hits a lot of small Florida towns the moment the snowbirds fly home. The honest downside is that Treasure Coast hurricane exposure is very real, and Stuart carries a higher poverty rate than the pretty downtown postcard would ever suggest. It's also very much no longer a secret, which means home prices have been steadily climbing as more and more people discover exactly what the magazines have been saying. But it earned that #1 national ranking for a reason, and it's still just small enough to feel like an actual town instead of another faceless development. 2 towns left now, and these are the 2 that locals are going to be genuinely annoyed I'm telling you about. Number 2, Crystal River, on the Nature Coast, in a town of fewer than 4,000 people. Something happens every single winter that is completely and totally illegal almost everywhere else on the entire planet. In Crystal River, you are legally allowed to get in the water and swim right alongside wild manatees. Here's why this one spot gets to break the rules. The town sits on Kings Bay, which is fed by a network of natural springs that stay a constant. Cozy 72 degrees year-round. So when the Gulf of Mexico turns cold in the winter months, hundreds upon hundreds of manatees migrate straight into that warm spring water just to survive the season. We're talking about well over 600 manatees crowding into the bay at peak, with a record single-day count of more than 500 of them counted at once. And Crystal River is the one and only place in all of North America where responsible permitted swimming with these enormous gentle giants is actually allowed. Picture Three Sisters Springs, where the water is so clear and so impossibly turquoise that it genuinely looks like someone cranked up the saturation slider, with slow-moving sea cows drifting lazily beneath a wooden boardwalk full of stunned tourists. You can launch a kayak from Hunter Springs Park at sunrise and quietly share the glassy water with an animal the size of a small car whose entire life ambition is to eat lettuce and be left completely alone. Honestly, relatable, and the cost of living here runs well below both the Florida and the national averages, which feels almost rude given the magic you get in exchange. Outside of manatee season, the town still delivers. You can fish, boat, and paddle the crystal clear spring runs year-round. The downtown has a walkable historic core, and homes here cost a fraction of what you would pay for comparable water access almost anywhere else in the state. It is the kind of place where an ordinary middle-class budget can still buy a genuine waterfront life, which is getting harder to find in Florida with every passing year. But now the catch, and this one is a genuine heavyweight. Crystal River gets absolutely hammered by storm. The downtown took several feet of storm surge from Hurricane Helene in 2024, and then, just weeks later, got hit all over again by Hurricane Milton, all on top of years of previous flooding from earlier storms. This is paradise with a very large, very wet asterisk attached. When the weather is calm, it is pure magic. When it isn't, the entire downtown can end up underwater. That's the trade you're signing up for. And it brings us, finally, to number one, Cedar Key. If you drive to the very end of a long, lonely road on Florida's Gulf Coast, past the endless salt marshes and the weathered shrimp boats, you eventually arrive at Cedar Key. Population, roughly 1,000 people. No high-rises, no traffic lights worth mentioning, no chain hotels crowding the shoreline, no strip malls, no fast food glow, just clusters of pastel stilt cottages, weathered wooden docks, pelicans on every piling, and a sunset over the Gulf that literally stops conversations mid-sentence. And this unassuming 1,000-person island quietly runs a genuine empire. More than 90% of all the clams produced in the entire state of Florida come from right here, from Cedar Key. Over 160 certified leaseholders farm these waters, harvesting an estimated 120 million clams every single year, supporting more than 500 jobs and adding tens of millions of dollars annually to this tiny local economy. A town you can walk across on foot in about 15 minutes feeds an enormous chunk of an entire state's shellfish industry. Let that number settle in for a second. Here's the single detail that tells you everything you need to know about the character of this place. To keep the bay water clean and pure enough to actually farm those clams, Cedar Key straight up banned septic tanks entirely. An entire town looked at its own infrastructure and reorganized it around protecting the water, because the water is the whole point, the whole economy, and the whole identity. That's not some tourist board gimmick. That's a community that understands with total clarity exactly what it has and exactly what it stands to lose. Life here is slow, surprisingly affordable by coastal standards, and about as authentically old Florida as anything left in the state. You can kayak out to the 13 protected islands of the Cedar Keys National Wildlife Refuge, watch birds by the thousands, drop a line off the historic fishing pier, and eat clams and oysters that were sitting in the Gulf that very morning. The catch is the same one that has haunted this entire countdown. Only here, it's turned up to full volume. Cedar Key is tiny, remote, aging, and brutally, dangerously exposed to storms. It got battered by Hurricane Idalia and then Hurricane Helene in back-to-back years, and every single time the town has to pick itself up and rebuild from the waterline. There are very few jobs here beyond the water itself. Healthcare is a long drive away, and getting to anything resembling a real city is a serious commitment. But that is also precisely why it works. Cedar Key survives because the people who live there have decided deliberately and on purpose that quiet is worth more than convenient, and that clean water is worth building a whole society around. And in a state that sells noise and chaos by the acre, 1,000 stubborn people betting everything on clean water and a slower life might just be the single smartest move on this entire list. So there's your full countdown. 10 tiny Florida towns, running from the crystal springs of High Springs all the way down to the clam empire of Cedar Key, each one cheaper, safer, and genuinely stranger than the plastic Florida you get sold on television. But you probably noticed the punchline threading through every single entry on this list. Almost all of these little paradises quietly share the exact same tax, a hurricane deductible, and a property insurance bill that seems to grow every single year whether you like it or not. That's the honest Florida deal, the fine print nobody reads out loud. The state hands you crystal clear springs, fossil-covered beaches, rolling hills, and working Greek fishing villages with one hand, and quietly slides you the storm invoice with the other. So which of these 10 would you actually pack up and move to? Drop the name in the comments below. And if your answer is Cedar Key, I'm going to need to hear your full hurricane insurance strategy, because I have serious concerns and possibly a follow-up question. And if this saved you from sitting through yet another generic, soulless Florida relocation video, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe, because I do this every single day. The best places to live, dream retirement spots, budget-friendly hidden gems, and the towns that nobody else has the nerve to actually tell you about. Stick around, because the next one just might be the town you end up calling home.